The clock on my nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. when Lila finally slipped through our bedroom door. I kept my breathing steady, eyes barely cracked open, watching her silhouette against the hallway light. She moved like a cat burglar in her own house, careful not to wake the sleeping husband. My name is Nick Harper, and I build things for a living. Houses, decks, commercial spaces, you name it. 20 years swinging hammers and reading blueprints taught me to notice when something doesn't fit right. And my wife of 8 years? She definitely wasn't fitting right anymore. Lila thought I was asleep, but sleep had become a stranger these past 3 weeks. Every night, the same routine. She'd claim another late meeting at the law firm, kiss my cheek with lips that tasted like mint gum covering something else, and disappear until the early morning hours. She padded to the bathroom, and I heard the shower start. At 3 a.m, after a client dinner that supposedly ended at 11. I sat up in bed, running my hands through my hair. The moonlight streaming through our bedroom window illuminated her discarded clothes on the chair. Her black blazer, the one she wore to court, hung wrinkled like it had been tossed aside in a hurry. But what caught my attention were her shoes. Sand. Tiny grains of beach sand clung to the soles of her expensive heels. Our house sits 15 miles inland from the coast. Lila's law office downtown doesn't have sand anywhere near it. Neither do any of the restaurants she claimed to frequent for these mysterious client meetings. The shower water stopped. I lay back down, closed my eyes, and listened to her routine. Hair dryer on low. Moisturizer. The careful way she slipped under the covers, maintaining that invisible barrier that had grown between us over the past month. "How was your meeting?" I whispered into the darkness. She tensed beside me. "Fine, just contract stuff. Go back to sleep, Nick." Must have been some contract. "You smell like ocean air." A pause. Too long. "We went to that seafood place on Harbor Street. You know how those coastal restaurants are." Harbor Street was 20 miles in the opposite direction from the ocean, but I didn't call her on it. Not yet. "Good night, Lila." "Good night." She was asleep within minutes, or at least pretending to be. Me? I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind working like it did on construction sites, methodically, carefully, building something piece by piece. The next morning, Lila left for work in her usual whirlwind of coffee, case files, and quick kisses. I stood at our kitchen window, watching her silver Subaru disappear down Maple Street, and made a decision that would change everything. I called my crew foreman and told him I'd be late to the job site. Then I walked out to my workshop in the converted garage behind our house. People underestimate contractors. They think we're all muscle and no brains, good for swinging hammers but not much else. What they don't realize is that modern construction requires more technology than most office jobs. GPS systems for equipment tracking, wireless cameras for site security, digital monitoring for everything from temperature to humidity. And I happen to have several unused GPS trackers sitting in my supply cabinet. The device was smaller than a matchbook, magnetic, with a battery life of 6 months. I'd originally bought them to track expensive tools that had a habit of walking off job sites. Now I had a different use in mind. Lila's car sat in our driveway, engine still warm. I slid under the rear bumper and attached the tracker to the metal frame, hidden behind the spare tire mount. The whole operation took 3 minutes. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike Chop's Chopper, my old army buddy who ran a tow truck service in town. "Beer tonight? Rosie's got that new IPA you like." "Can't. Surveillance duty," I texted back. "Trouble in paradise?" "More like trouble in purgatory. I'll call you later." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The mooring line sat on the rough side of downtown, where the blue-collar crowd went to drink away their problems. Rosie Martinez had owned the place for 15 years. ever since her husband left her with nothing but debts and a liquor license. She'd turned it into the kind of bar where everybody knew your name, your troubles, and when to mind their own business. I claimed my usual stool at the end of the bar and ordered a beer. Rosie, a stocky woman with graying hair and knowing eyes, slid the bottle across the scarred wooden surface. "You look like a man with problems, Nick Harper." Just the usual. Work, wife, wondering where my life went wrong. Wife problems are the worst kind. They get under your skin and stay there. I pulled out my phone and opened the GPS tracking app. A red dot pulsed on the map, showing Lila's current location. Downtown, at her office building. Normal so far. "You ever notice how people change, Rosie? Slowly, so you don't see it happening until one day you wake up next to a stranger?" She polished a glass with practiced efficiency. "Marriage is like a house, Nick. You don't maintain it, things start falling apart. Question is, do you fix it or tear it down and start over?" Good question. I was still trying to figure out the answer. My phone buzzed. The red dot was moving. I checked the time, 6:30 p.m. Lila usually worked until at least 8 on normal days, later when she had her mysterious meetings. The dot headed east, toward the coast, not toward home, not toward any restaurant I knew about. I left money on the bar and headed for my truck. Following someone in a small town requires finesse. Too close, and they spot you in their mirror. Too far, and you lose them at a traffic light. I kept 3 cars between my pickup and Lila's Subaru as we wound through the evening traffic. She drove with purpose, no hesitation at intersections, no checking of GPS. This was a familiar route. The red dot on my phone led me to the outskirts of town, where the old money families had built summer homes back in the 1920s. Large lots, mature trees, houses set back from winding roads. Perfect for privacy. Lila's car turned into a driveway I recognized. My stomach clenched as the pieces fell into place. The Baird property. Jonas Baird, senior partner at Lila's law firm. The man who'd been her mentor, her boss, and apparently something much more. I parked a quarter-mile down the road and walked back through the trees. The main house sat dark and empty. Jonas's wife Vivian was visiting her sister in Boston, according to the society page gossip my neighbor Mrs. Franks loved to share. But behind the main house, lights glowed in the windows of what the locals called the guest house. Guest house was a modest term for what amounted to a small mansion. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, stone fireplace, and a view of the private beach that came with the property. I crept closer, using the landscaping for cover. Through the bay window, I could see them clearly. Lila sat on a leather couch, her shoes kicked off, a glass of wine in her hand. She'd changed out of her business suit into a sundress I'd never seen before. Jonas Baird, a man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that comes from inherited wealth, sat beside her. They weren't discussing legal briefs. His hand rested on her knee. She leaned into him, laughing at something he said. When he kissed her, she didn't pull away. I'd prepared myself for this moment, told myself I was ready for confirmation of what I already suspected. But seeing it happen, watching my wife of 8 years betray everything we'd built together, hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I took photos with my phone, video too. The timestamp would prove when and where this was happening. Evidence, documentation, the foundation of whatever came next. They moved to the bedroom. I didn't follow. I'd seen enough. The drive home passed in a blur. Our house looked different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The mortgage we'd scraped together, the renovations we'd planned, the future we'd mapped out over kitchen table conversations and Sunday morning coffee. All of it built on lies. I sat in my truck in our driveway for 20 minutes, engine off, trying to decide what to do next. Confront her immediately? Gather more evidence? Call a lawyer? My phone rang. Lila. Hey, honey, I'm going to be really late tonight. This client is demanding we finish the contract review before morning. Which client? A pause. The Morrison development deal. You know how these real estate contracts are. Morrison Development. I'd worked construction on 3 Morrison projects over the past 5 years. I knew the company's lawyers, their processes, their timelines. They didn't do emergency midnight contract reviews. Sounds rough. Don't work too hard. I won't. Love you. Love you too. The lie came easily. Maybe I'd been practicing longer than I realized. I went inside and opened a beer, then another. By the third one, the sharp edge of betrayal had dulled into something more useful. Cold, calculating anger. Lila thought she was clever. Jonas thought he was untouchable. They both thought I was just some dumb contractor who wouldn't notice the sand on her shoes or the smell of expensive cologne that wasn't mine. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Mrs. Franks lived in the house next door, a 70-year-old widow who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. She also happened to be friends with Vivian Baird from their garden club. I walked over and knocked on her door. "Nick, what a surprise! How are you, dear?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Franks. I was wondering if you could help me with something. You know the Baird family, right?" "Oh, yes, lovely people." "Well, Vivian is lovely. Jonas can be a bit—" She made a face like she'd tasted something sour. "I'm thinking about doing some renovation work on their guest house. When do you think Vivian will be back from Boston?" "Tomorrow afternoon, I believe. She called yesterday to ask if I'd check on the property while she was away. Apparently there have been some security concerns." "Security concerns. Perfect. You know, Mrs. Franks, I've been having some trouble with vandals at my job sites lately. Would you mind if I set up a security camera or 2 around the neighborhood, just to keep an eye on things?" "Of course, dear. Whatever helps keep us all safe." I spent the next hour installing a wireless camera with a clear view of the guest house entrance. The device would send alerts to my phone whenever it detected movement and record everything to a cloud storage account. By the time Lila came home at 2:15 a.m., I had the foundation of my plan in place. She slipped into bed beside me, still carrying that faint scent of ocean air and expensive cologne. This time, I didn't pretend to sleep. "How did the contract review go?" "Fine. Tedious, but we got through it." "Good. By the way, I ran into Tom Morrison at the hardware store today. He mentioned their legal work was all wrapped up weeks ago." Silence, then, "Different project, the new waterfront development." Another lie. Morrison Development hadn't announced any waterfront projects. "Well, I'm glad you're home safe. Good night, Lila." Good night. This time, she was the one who lay awake staring at the ceiling. The security camera earned its keep within 24 hours. My phone buzzed with an alert at 7:30 p.m. the next evening, motion detected at the Baird guest house. I opened the app and watched Lila's silver Subaru pull into the driveway. Jonas's black BMW was already there. The timestamp would show exactly when they arrived and how long they stayed. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just gathering evidence. I'd spent the afternoon making phone calls and doing research. Jonas Baird had a reputation around town as a man who got what he wanted, regardless of who got hurt in the process. His law firm specialized in real estate development, often representing clients who wanted to buy out longtime residents for commercial projects. More interesting was his personal life. Married to Vivian for 22 years, 2 grown children, both living out of state, a man who valued his reputation in the community, served on the hospital board, donated generously to local charities, a man who had everything to lose if his affair became public knowledge. I called Chops. "I need a favor, buddy. Can you meet me at Rosie's in an hour?" "Sure thing. You sound different, Nick. Everything okay?" "Everything's about to be." The mooring line was busy for a Wednesday night. Construction crews from 3 different job sites occupied the tables near the dartboard, unwinding after long days of physical labor. I found Chops at our usual spot at the bar. Mike Chops. Chopper got his nickname in the Army, where he'd been the guy who could fix anything with wheels, tracks, or rotors. These days, he ran the most successful tow truck operation in 3 counties, which meant he knew every road, every shortcut, and every place people went when they didn't want to be found. "You look like a man with a plan," he said, sliding a beer across to me. "I need some information, discreetly." "What kind of information?" "The kind that might help a friend understand why his wife has been lying to him for the past month." Chops nodded slowly. He'd been through his own messy divorce 5 years earlier. "What do you need?" "Jonas Baird. What do you know about him?" "Rich guy, thinks he owns half the town, drives a BMW like he's auditioning for a racing team. His wife seems nice enough, but she's got that look." "What look?" "The look women get when they know their husband's cheating, but haven't decided what to do about it yet." "Interesting. Very interesting. Has he called your service lately? Maybe needed a discreet tow from somewhere he shouldn't have been?" Chops grinned. "Funny you should ask. 3 weeks ago, his fancy car broke down on Harbor Road, middle of the night, wanted me to tow it to the dealer instead of his house, paid cash for the extra mileage." Harbor Road led to the beach access points, the same area where Lila had been picking up sand on her shoes. "He seemed nervous?" "Nervous? Hell, he was sweating bullets. Kept checking his phone, asking how long the tow would take. Had a woman with him too, but she stayed in my truck while I loaded his car." "You get a look at her? Dark hair, nice dress. Looked familiar, but I couldn't place her at the time." I showed him a photo of Lila from my phone. "Son of a gun. That's her. Your wife was the woman in my truck." The pieces were falling into place. Harbor Road, the beach access, the guest house meetings. They'd been carrying on this affair for at least 3 weeks, probably longer. My phone buzzed with another alert from the security camera. Jonas's BMW was leaving the guest house. Lila's car remained. "I need another favor, Chops, a big one." "Name it." "Tomorrow night, I need you to make sure Vivian Baird gets a phone call. Anonymous tip about suspicious activity at her guest house. Think you can handle that?" "Consider it done. But Nick, are you sure about this? Once you light this fuse, there's no going back." I thought about Lila lying beside me every night, spinning elaborate stories about client meetings and contract reviews. I thought about the 8 years we'd spent building what I thought was a partnership, a marriage, a life together. The fuse was lit the moment she decided to betray everything we had. I'm just making sure it reaches the dynamite. We finished our beers in comfortable silence. Around us, the bar hummed with conversation and laughter, the sound of people who still believed in simple pleasures and honest work. Tomorrow night, that simplicity would be shattered for at least 2 families, but sometimes the truth was worth the wreckage it caused. I drove home through streets I'd known my entire adult life, past houses I'd helped build and businesses I'd worked on. This town had been good to me, given me a trade, a reputation, a place to belong. Lila's car wasn't in our driveway yet. According to the GPS tracker, she was still at the guest house, still living her double life. I sat on our front porch and waited. The night air carried the scent of late summer, cut grass and barbecue smoke from neighborhood dinners. Normal life, continuing around me while my own world prepared to explode. At 11:45 p.m., headlights swept across our driveway. Lila parked and walked toward the house, her heels clicking on the concrete walkway. She looked relaxed, satisfied, like a woman who'd just spent the evening doing exactly what she wanted. "You're up late," she said, climbing the porch steps. "Couldn't sleep. Nice night for a drive." "I wouldn't know. I've been stuck in the office all evening." "Of course you have." She paused at the front door, key in her hand. "Is everything okay, Nick? You seem different lately." "Just tired, I guess. Work's been stressful." "Well, don't wait up for me tomorrow night. I've got another late meeting." "With the Morrison account?" "Among others." Another lie, delivered without hesitation. She'd gotten comfortable with deception, practiced at it. How long had this been going on? How many other lies had I accepted without question? Good night, Lila. Good night. I followed her inside, watched her go through her routine of checking locks and turning off lights. Domestic normalcy performed by a woman who was systematically destroying our marriage. Tomorrow night, the performance would end. Vivian Baird returned from Boston on Thursday afternoon, driving her white Mercedes into the circular driveway of the family estate. I watched from my truck, parked discreetly down the road, as she unloaded luggage and disappeared into the main house. She was an elegant woman in her late 40s, the kind of person who belonged on charity event committees and garden club boards. Her husband's betrayal would hit her like a wrecking ball, but she deserved to know the truth. My phone showed Lila's GPS location at her downtown office. Normal workday routine, at least until evening. At 6:00 p.m. sharp, Chops made the call. I'd scripted it carefully. An anonymous, concerned neighbor reporting suspicious activity at the Baird guest house. Lights at odd hours, unfamiliar cars, possible break-ins while the family was away. Vivian would want to investigate. Any responsible homeowner would. At 7:15, my security camera captured Lila's arrival at the guest house. She had a key, I noticed. This wasn't a casual affair. It was a full-blown relationship, complete with access to Jonas's family property. At 7:22, Jonas's BMW pulled in behind her. At 7:45, Vivian's white Mercedes turned into the driveway. I was already in position, hidden in the tree line with a clear view of the guest house entrance. My phone recorded everything as Vivian walked up to the front door and tried the handle. Locked. She knocked, called out, then walked around to the bay window. Through the glass, she could see exactly what I'd seen 3 nights earlier. Her husband and my wife, together on the leather couch, wine glasses in hand, his arm around her shoulders. Vivian stood frozen for a moment, processing the scene. Then she pulled out her phone and took photos, just as I had. She tried the front door again, this time pounding hard enough to rattle the frame. "Jonas, open this door right now." Panic inside. I could see them through the window, scrambling to separate. Lila grabbing her shoes, Jonas trying to straighten his shirt. The door opened. Jonas appeared, attempting to look casual and failing miserably. "Vivian, you're back early. I was just..." Just what? Just entertaining my replacement in our guest house? Lila appeared behind him, fully dressed, but disheveled. The 3 of them stood in the doorway, a tableau of betrayal and consequences. "This isn't what it looks like," Jonas said. "Really? Because it looks like you're having an affair with your employee in the house my father's money helped buy." Vivian's voice carried across the yard, sharp with 22 years of suppressed suspicions finally confirmed. "We need to talk about this privately," Jonas said, glancing around nervously. "Privately? You mean like how you've been privately using our family property for your affair? How long has this been going on?" Neither Jonas nor Lila answered. "Get out," Vivian said to Lila. "Get out of my house, off my property, and out of my sight." Lila hurried to her car without a word. As she backed out of the driveway, her headlights swept across my hiding spot. For a moment I thought she might have seen me, but she drove away without stopping. Jonas and Vivian's argument continued on the front steps, their voices carrying clearly in the still evening air. 22 years, Jonas. 22 years I've looked the other way, made excuses, believed your lies about late meetings and business trips. Vivian, please. No, I'm done. I'm calling my lawyer in the morning. She walked back to her Mercedes, leaving Jonas standing alone in the doorway of the guest house. He looked older suddenly, diminished. A man watching his carefully constructed life collapse in real time. I stayed hidden until both cars left, then retrieved my security camera and drove home. Lila's Subaru sat in our driveway, but the house was dark. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a glass of wine, still wearing the dress she'd worn to meet her lover. "How was your evening?" I asked. She looked up, startled. In the overhead light, I could see she'd been crying. "Fine. Just the usual client stuff." "Funny. Mrs. Franks called about an hour ago. Said there was some kind of commotion at the Baird place. Shouting, cars leaving at high speed. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Her wine glass trembled in her hand. "Why would I know anything about the Bairds?" "Because you work for Jonas. Because you've been having an affair with him for weeks, maybe months. Because tonight his wife caught you together in their guest house." Silence. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the space between us. "Nick, Don't insult me with more lies." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken 3 nights earlier. Her face went pale. "I know about the late meetings that aren't meetings. I know about Harbor Road and the beach access and the guest house key you're carrying. I know about the GPS tracker I put on your car and the security camera that recorded everything tonight." She set down her wine glass and straightened in her chair. The tears stopped. When she looked at me again, her expression was cold, calculating. "What do you want, Nick?" "I want my wife back. The woman I married, not this stranger who's been lying to me for months." "That woman never existed. You married an idea, a fantasy. I've been playing a role for 8 years, being the perfect small-town wife for the local contractor. Do you have any idea how suffocating that's been?" Her words hit like physical blows. 8 years of marriage, dismissed as a performance. "So you decided to have an affair with your boss?" "I decided to take control of my life. Jonas appreciates me, values my mind, my ambition. He sees me as more than just someone to cook dinner and make small talk about construction projects. He sees you as a convenient affair, a younger woman to make him feel important while his wife pays the bills. You don't understand anything about our relationship." "I understand enough. I understand that it's over." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Is it? Because Jonas has resources you can't imagine. Connections, influence, money. If you think you can destroy what we have with a few grainy photos and small-town gossip, you're even more naive than I thought." "We'll see about that." I walked upstairs, leaving her alone in the kitchen. From our bedroom window, I could see Mrs. Franks's house, where lights burned late into the night. By tomorrow morning, half the town would know about the confrontation at the Baird estate. In a small community, reputation was everything. Jonas and Lila were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Friday morning brought the first taste of consequences. I was drinking coffee on the front porch when Mrs. Franks appeared at her garden gate, practically vibrating with news. "Nick, you'll never guess what happened last night." "Try me." "The Baird marriage is over. Finished. Vivian packed a suitcase and drove straight to her sister's house in Portland. She's filing for divorce." "That's terrible news." "The worst part is, it's all over some affair Jonas was having. With a younger woman, can you imagine? After 22 years of marriage." I made appropriate shocked noises, while Mrs. Franks shared every detail she'd gathered from her network of neighborhood informants. The story would spread through town like wildfire, growing more elaborate with each telling. Lila had left for work before I woke up. According to the GPS tracker, she'd driven straight to the law office, no detours to guest houses or beach access roads. My phone rang. "Chops. You see the news this morning?" "What news?" "Check the local paper's website, front page." I pulled up the site on my phone. The headline made me smile. "Prominent attorney's marriage ends amid affair allegations." The article was carefully worded to avoid libel charges, but it painted a clear picture. Jonas Baird, senior partner at Baird, Morrison and Associates, was facing divorce proceedings after his wife discovered evidence of an extramarital affair. The story mentioned a female colleague, but didn't name Lila specifically. Yet. "This is just the beginning," I told Chops. "Small towns love a scandal, especially when it involves people who think they're better than everyone else." "What's your next move?" I'm going to let them make the next move. People like Jonas and Lila always overreact when they feel cornered. They'll do something stupid, and when they do, I'll be ready. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:30 a.m., my phone rang. Jonas Baird. We need to talk. About what? You know damn well what. Meet me at the construction site on Harbor Road in 1 hour. Come alone. He hung up before I could respond. Harbor Road. The same area where his car had broken down 3 weeks ago, where he and Lila had been conducting their affair. He was either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid. Possibly both. I called Chops. Remember that favor you owe me? I need backup at the Harbor Road site in an hour. Trouble? The kind that thinks expensive suits make them bulletproof. The construction site was a half-finished strip mall, abandoned when the developer ran out of money 6 months earlier. Concrete foundations, steel framing, stacks of unused materials covered by weathered tarps. The perfect place for a private conversation. Jonas's BMW sat in the gravel parking area when I arrived. He stood near the main foundation, checking his phone, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. I parked 50 yards away and walked over, my boots crunching on the loose gravel. Nice location for a meeting. Brings back memories. His face flushed. Let's get something straight, Harper. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but it ends now. Game? You mean like the game where you seduce my wife and use your family property for secret meetings? Your marriage was over long before I came along. Lila's been miserable for years, trapped in this backwater town with a husband who can't appreciate what he has. So you decided to help her out? How generous. I'm offering you a way out of this mess with your dignity intact. Lila wants a divorce. Give it to her quietly, and I'll make sure you're compensated fairly. Compensated? He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. There's my personal attorney's number. He'll handle the paperwork. Make sure you get a reasonable settlement. Enough to start over somewhere else. Somewhere else. He wanted me gone, out of the picture, so he could continue his affair without complications. What makes you think I want to start over? Because the alternative is a very public, very messy divorce where all your personal business gets dragged through court. Lila's a good attorney, Harper. She knows how to make these things painful. Is that a threat? It's reality. You're a small-town contractor with a high school education. She's a Harvard Law graduate with connections throughout the state. Who do you think the judge will believe? Harvard Law. That was news to me. Lila had always claimed she went to the state university. You seem to know a lot about my wife's background. I know everything about Lila. Her education, her career goals, her potential. She's wasted enough years playing house with you. The contempt in his voice was unmistakable. I wasn't just an obstacle to his affair. I was beneath his notice, a blue-collar nobody who'd accidentally married above his station. Here's my counteroffer, I said. You end the affair, transfer to another firm, and stay away from my wife. In exchange, I don't send copies of my surveillance photos to every member of the State Bar Association. He laughed. You think anyone cares about a few grainy pictures? I'm a respected attorney with 25 years of experience. You're a nobody with a grudge. We'll see about that. I turned to walk away, but his voice stopped me. Harper, don't make me destroy you. I have resources you can't imagine. One phone call and your contracting license gets reviewed. Another call and your business insurance gets canceled. Push me, and I'll make sure you never work in this state again. Now it was my turn to laugh. You really don't understand how small towns work, do you? Reputation matters here, community matters. And right now, you're the outsider who broke up his marriage for a piece of tail. His face went red. You son of a... Careful. Wouldn't want anyone to think you were threatening me. I walked back to my truck, feeling his eyes on my back. As I drove away, I saw another vehicle in my rearview mirror. Chops's tow truck, parked behind a stand of trees with a clear view of the construction site. My phone rang before I reached the main road. Get all that? I asked. Every word. Amazing how well sound carries when the wind's right. Jonas Baird just made his first big mistake. He thinks this is about money and legal maneuvering. What's it really about? Justice. And in a small town, justice is a community effort. By Saturday morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. The local coffee shops buzzed with speculation about Jonas Baird's affair. The hardware store where contractors gathered for morning coffee was full of men who'd worked honest jobs their entire lives, watching a rich lawyer's world collapse. Lila hadn't come home Friday night. According to the GPS tracker, her car was parked at a downtown hotel. She was making her choice, picking sides in a war she'd started. My phone rang at 8 a.m. Unknown number. Mr. Harper, this is Detective Stan Grogan with the Sheriff's Department. I'd like to ask you a few questions about an incident yesterday. What kind of incident? Jonas Baird filed a complaint alleging harassment and threats, says you've been stalking his family, taking unauthorized photographs and making threatening statements. I almost laughed. Jonas was playing the victim card, trying to use his connections to turn me into the bad guy. Detective, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Would you like to hear the recordings I made of Mr. Baird threatening to destroy my business and end my career? Silence. Then, what recordings? The conversation we had yesterday at the Harbor Road construction site, where he admitted to having an affair with my wife and offered to pay me to disappear quietly. You recorded a private conversation without consent? I recorded a conversation on a public construction site where Mr. Baird threatened me. Last I checked, that was legal. Another pause. I'd like to hear those recordings, Mr. Harper. I'll be happy to bring them by the station this afternoon. After I hung up, I called Chops. Time for phase 2. What do you need? Remember that charity auction the volunteer fire department runs every year? The one where they raise money for new equipment? Sure, it's next weekend at the community center. I want to make a donation, something special. The Riverside Community Center sat on 3 acres of parkland overlooking the harbor. Every year, the volunteer fire department held their fundraising auction there, drawing crowds from throughout the county. Local businesses donated goods and services, families brought picnic lunches, and the whole event had the feel of an old-fashioned county fair. This year's auction would be memorable for different reasons. I spent Saturday afternoon preparing my donation, a professionally edited video compilation of Jonas and Lila's affair, complete with timestamps, GPS coordinates, and audio recordings. The package included photos of them entering and leaving the guest house, documentation of their lies about work meetings, and Jonas's threats from the Harbor Road confrontation. I titled it, The Truth About Small-Town Values, and submitted it to the auction organizers as an anonymous donation. Sunday morning brought another phone call from Detective Grogan. Mr. Harper, I've reviewed your evidence. While Mr. Baird's behavior was inappropriate, I don't see any criminal activity here. What about his threats to destroy my business? Legally questionable, but not criminal. However, I did have an interesting conversation with Mr. Baird about his harassment complaint. Oh? Seems he's decided not to pursue charges. Something about wanting to handle this matter privately. Jonas was backing down, probably on advice from his attorney. A criminal complaint would make everything public record, open to media scrutiny. I appreciate you looking into this, Detective. Mr. Harper, let me give you some advice. Whatever you're planning, think carefully about the consequences. Revenge has a way of hurting everyone involved. I'm not planning revenge, Detective. I'm planning justice. Monday morning, Lila finally came home. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, when she walked through the front door. She looked exhausted, defeated. The confident attorney who'd dismissed our marriage as a performance was gone, replaced by a woman who'd realized her choices had consequences. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. Jonas thinks we should leave town together, start over somewhere else, away from all this gossip and judgment. What do you think? I think I made a mistake, not about us. Our marriage was falling apart long before Jonas came along. But I handled it wrong, sneaking around lying to you. So what now? I want a divorce. Clean, simple, no fault. We split the assets fairly and move on with our lives. And Jonas? That's between him and me. I set down my coffee cup and looked at the woman I'd married 8 years earlier. She was right about one thing. Our marriage had been falling apart for a long time. But that didn't excuse the betrayal, the lies, or the way she had destroyed everything we'd built together. I'll agree to the divorce on one condition. What? You both stay in town long enough to face the consequences of what you've done. No running away to start fresh somewhere else. That's not fair. This town will crucify us. You should have thought of that before you decided to have an affair. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine. But after the divorce is final, I'm leaving. There's nothing left for me here. That's your choice. She went upstairs to pack. I heard dresser drawers opening and closing, the sound of a life being dismantled piece by piece. The auction was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. 5 more days for the story to spread, for people to choose sides, for the community to render its judgment. In small towns, justice wasn't always pretty, but it was thorough. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, mild temperatures, the kind of day that brought families out for community events. The parking lot at the Riverside Community Center was packed by noon, cars and trucks representing every neighborhood in town. I arrived early and positioned myself near the back of the crowd, close enough to watch but far enough away to avoid becoming part of the show. The auction proceeded normally for the first hour. Tools, gift certificates, handmade crafts, all the usual donated items. The crowd was relaxed, families enjoying a weekend afternoon together. Then the auctioneer picked up my donation package. Next item is a special multimedia presentation titled The Truth About Small-Town Values. The donor wishes to remain anonymous, but they've requested that we preview the content before bidding begins. A large screen had been set up for the auction, normally used to display photos of larger items. Now it flickered to life with my carefully edited video. The crowd fell silent as they watched Jonas and Lila enter the guest house together. The timestamp showed the date and time clearly. The GPS coordinates proved the location. Then came the audio from Jonas's threats at the construction site, his voice clear and unmistakable as he described his plans to destroy my business and drive me out of town. The video ended with a simple message. In small towns, character matters. Choose wisely. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then someone in the crowd started clapping. Others joined in until the applause filled the community center. Jonas and Lila weren't there to witness their public humiliation, but word would reach them within hours. In the age of smartphones and social media, nothing stayed secret for long. The auctioneer, a local businessman who'd known me for years, smiled as he raised his gavel. Well, folks, I think we can all agree this presentation speaks for itself. Do I hear any bids? The bidding was spirited, but brief. Mrs. Franks won with an offer of $50, announcing her intention to share copies with anyone who'd missed the show. I slipped out during the applause, my work finally complete. Monday morning brought the final chapter. Lila's law firm announced that both she and Jonas Baird were pursuing other opportunities. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story about the auction, carefully avoiding direct accusations but making the implications clear. Jonas's BMW disappeared from town that same week. Word was he'd taken a position with a firm in another state, far from the wreckage of his reputation. Lila stayed long enough to finalize our divorce, then followed him into exile. I kept the house, the business, and the respect of a community that valued honesty over sophistication, character over credentials. 6 months later, I was having a beer at Rosie's when Chops raised his bottle in a toast. To Nick Harper, a man who proved that in small towns, the truth always wins. The truth and a little help from friends. That's what friends are for. Outside, the harbor lights reflected off the dark water, and the town settled into another peaceful evening. Justice had been served, not in a courtroom or a lawyer's office, but in the court of public opinion where it mattered most. After midnight, when the bars closed and the streets emptied, I drove home through familiar neighborhoods where people still believed in right and wrong, where actions had consequences, and where a man's word was still his bond. In places like that, mercy was a luxury reserved for those who deserved it, and some people simply didn't qualify.